Hello, Gareth here, and today I'm not feeling so great. I've got major foggy brain, I've got this froggy throat, and it's very hot because the air conditioner is off, because it will be a bit noisy if I'm recording, yeah? So anyway, and because I don't trust myself, I've got this list that I've written down of things to say. Anyway, this is what we're going to be painting. It's a stone building, and I really love this stone building. I love the colour of it. I love the texture and the details. So I hope you do too. And what else? So this is a chapel, or rather it was a chapel in the Orkney Islands of Scotland. Wow, I'm struggling here. And I was also struggling painting this picture. So, but it's okay, because maybe you will learn a lot from watching me struggle. And also you can enjoy. So, and also I was very distracted by this spider that was just crawling all over me, crawling over my head, then my arm, then my leg. So that was very distracting. And at the end, so you can just skip to the end if you like, and you can see my original sketches and two other smaller finished paintings that I did. So one was a lot like this with a daytime scene, but the other one was an evening scene. And I think you'll just find it interesting to see the different versions that I did. And there's a list of materials in the description box. I might not have included everything, so apologies if I didn't, but you'll find mostly everything there. And please leave comments, nice comments, and because it really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. Yeah, I could say algorithm. Oh, safe. Okay, so let's begin. I really hope you enjoy this lesson. So roughly, I think about where the building is going to go and how high to do the ground. So I'm thinking about here. It is very, very rough. Okay, this comes up to about here. This is quite tricky. So that looks a bit too long. That's fine. Don't worry about getting it wrong. You can change it. So make it about there. Maybe that's better. And this end part is much lower than this. It's about here. So it's a lot lower. And it ends about here. And I know it's a bit of a pain, but try to get the ends of the walls, the corners, vertical as possible. Then we've got this beautiful hole here. And then another window here. And then another window here. And then we've got a hill over here. Okay, I think that's okay. Now we're going to do the rocks. And this is quite challenging. They are very beautiful though. So I'm trying to draw them as simply as possible and not get too caught up in complicated shapes. I'm also thinking that the bottom bit, if I do it a bit bumpy like that, it's going to look better. It's going to look like there's grass underneath. I think when I was practicing drawing these rocks, one of the mistakes I made was to draw the bottom bit like a straight line, and then they end up looking like they're like floating or not actually embedded in the ground. But they are very beautiful and a very interesting feature of this painting. Have to be careful that I make the spacing between the rocks irregular. If it looks like 1, 2, 3 equally spaced, that will seem very unnatural and strange. And it might even be like that in reality, but you don't want it to be like that in your painting. So I think it's getting there. I'm just doing some basic shading to help me. So as I always say, the teacher is a cheater. And the reason is I've done about 4 versions of this now. So I've had a lot of practice. So when you have a go at this, the very first time, you are going to find it very challenging. So don't worry about that. Do that rough ground underneath. Okay, we're getting there. So the first time I did these rocks, I really found it difficult. And although I think I've gotten a bit better, it's still a little bit challenging for me. But at least it's beginning to look rockish. Okay, and I actually think that's it. So, time for the painting. First, I'm going to do the sky. So, with a wide flat brush, I wet the sky area. This is perhaps too wet. Then I'm going to make a light blue colour. It might be slightly purplish. So I use some cerulean blue and a touch of alizarin crimson. I get it from the hard bit because if I dab at the soft bit, then I might get too much. And I don't like that, so I'm going to try cobalt blue instead. So, beautiful colour. Bit of red. Lots of water. And then I might add just a little bit of yellow ochre to grey it. Okay, I think that's good. Dab on the rag. Now I have to look very carefully now. So we've got a bit here. Then there's a bit here. A bit here. And then a bit down here. The whole bottom area is grey. It's really looking at blobs. and then go darker. So get my blue, same mix but thicker, alizarin crimson or quadracine something, basically a cool red, and yellow ochre. If it takes you a long time to make these mixes, then you might want to make them before you start, because if it takes you a long time, then the paper is drying out, and that's a bad thing, because what we're creating here, if you can see it, is a lovely soft edge, and you can only achieve that if the paper is wet. And just to make it a little bit more challenging, if the paper is too wet and your mix is too wet, it will just spread out like an explosion. So you don't want that either. So there is kind of like a time limit. And also conditions around you are going to affect it. So if it's very humid, then you should, I think, have more time. But if it's very dry, then it could be a very short time period that you've got. So I think that's looking good. My fainter colour was too faint. Can you see that? Because it's just disappeared. So that didn't really work. So I'm just going to go even darker. Get my blue, alizarin crimson, and yellow ochre, because I need some more contrast in this sky. Okay, dab on the rag. I dab it on the rag because there might be too much water on the brush. So it's very important to do that. Students don't use their rag enough. But don't lose your rag. Sorry, had to do a bad joke there. Couldn't resist it. And if you look here, it's gone dry. So that means I'm getting to the end of my painting window. So the upper part will dry quicker, I think, because the water's running down, so it's drying out. Whereas the bottom bit, where the water's collecting, is going to stay wet the longest. So what that means is you've really got to get the upper part done as quick as possible. And then you've got hopefully a bit more time with the lower part. It's not exactly how I've done it, I think, but there we go. So that's looking quite nice, I think. So this is like the danger phase, when if your brush is too wet and the paper's dried out a little bit, quite a bit, then you might end up with a cauliflower. Okay, let's leave that to dry. Not too bad. Now let's do the blue part of the sky. So I need my wide flat brush. Oh, here it is. So wet this area. Make sure you've got a clean brush. And don't do this repeatedly over the same area, because it will start to shift the paint. I can get rid of that cauliflower or soften it. So you can do things like that, which is a lot of fun. And you can create some really delicate, beautiful skies in this way. Okay, so now I'm using a pointed oval brush. I'm getting some cobalt blue. Oh, it's a bit dirty. Very dirty. Okay, we're getting there. Taking a bit of time. So have to be careful about time in watercolor painting. So dab on the rag to stop it being too wet, and then and there'll be places where it almost touches or even touches, which is fine. Just trying to get that beautiful cloud edge. But the important thing here is you don't have to do the sky in one go. I might merge it here a little bit, like that. And it's beginning to dry out here. Okay, there we go. Let's leave it to dry. Next, we're going to paint the building and the rocks. So I'm going to use mop brush and also this pointed oval brush. I forgot what it was called. Okay, so here we go. Some yellow ochre. Maybe a tiny bit of blue in there, which is fine. And I forgot to do the wall. So the wall is there. And I got some splatter. And then a little bit of variation. Tiny bit of burnt sienna. Let's just spray that. Okay. And then maybe switch to this brush. Okay, let's do the rocks now. So yellow, touch of blue. Okay. This is fairly easy. When we do the grass, that's going to be quite challenging, to be honest, because we're going to have to paint around these rocks, and there's quite a lot of them. So the trick there is to keep spraying a lot and keep the paint wet. Ooh. Okay, there we go. Let's leave this to dry, and then we're ready to do the grass. Next, I'm going to do the grass. So one of the ways I'm thinking of doing this is wetting the paper first, because it's going to take me a long time to paint around these rocks, and the paint's going to dry out, I think. So I don't know if this will work, but I'm going to try it and we'll see what happens. I'm sure there's a real good way of doing this, and hopefully one day I will figure it out. Sadly, my paints are not soft, so already I'm losing time. It's that critical. It really is critical. And I am trying to mix colours as well. Around the rocks, I would like a kind of yellowy green colour if possible. We'll see what happens. It is actually yellow, but if I paint it yellow, then it might become difficult to read where the grass is and where the rock is. Now that's not too bad what I've done there. I've probably gone into that too much, but always learning. You just have to, in my opinion at least, put your perfectionism back on the shelf and just get on with the job. That perfectionism can really handicap, well, it really handicaps me on occasion, yeah. And the thing is, if you just keep going despite all the mistakes, eventually you do get wonderful successes. And this might be one of them. So I think this has dried out. Doesn't matter getting paint on here. I'll hide that with a shadow. I forgot that around these rocks I was going to do a yellowy green colour. Spray time. I did quite well, but now it's drying out big time. I think I can get this bit done quite quickly. I should have made a big mix before I started. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? But I didn't. But I did want to change my colours quite a bit as well whilst I was doing this, so. Okay. You can use a tissue like an eraser. And spray. And I shouldn't go back into this dry area, but sometimes I do. It's really nice if you can get a little bit of variation and textural effects in here. Not always easy. So now I'm going back into this with slightly thicker mix, greener mix. Now this doesn't work for you if it goes really wrong and you get cauliflowers and stuff like that. Please remember, I've done this quite a lot of times now, so I've got a fairly good feeling for it and I can push it a bit sometimes. Oh, there we go. I think that's quite nice. Got like little bits of variation in here. And I could do more, but I really think that's enough. Need to let that dry now. Now I'm going to do the building. And using my bamboo brush, and I'm trying to show the variation of colour and texture in the stone wall. Not so easy. So begin with some yellow ochre and dab on the rag just to make it less intense. Okay, and then maybe add a little bit of this dirt here to darken it. So maybe this is too subtle, and when it dries, you're not really going to see these subtleties, but we'll find out. Let's get some burnt sienna. Okay, and then over here. And I'll also move on to the rocks. So use some burnt sienna, a touch of yellow ochre, and here we go. Add a little bit of this dirt because it's too bright. I don't do this bit because it's in shadow. But then again, maybe I should. Let's see, as an experiment, if some of this or some of these marks underneath will come through when we do a dark wash over the top, because it might look good. So you always want to be experimenting a bit. This wall is just so beautiful. And good idea or bad idea, I'm going to do a darker mix of this. I'm just adding some dirt from another area of the palette and doing this. So to be honest, I'm still not very good at this. Okay, let's leave that to dry. And I think also I'm going to get some cobalt blue. And I'm going to do this blue area again because I think it's too faint. Maybe when I painted it, my blue was not a pure blue. Could be a bad idea. I do believe that you're supposed to do it just one time and then leave it, but that's the ideal. So I just think this needs touching up a bit. Could be wrong. We're about to find out. What do you think? Is it better? Let me know in the comments. And also, I think I'll just wet this. So I should have wet the whole area, but there we go. Apologies, but my voice is not so good today. Sometimes a bit like that. And then I'm going to use pointed oval brush. And I might get some cerulean blue. Tissue. And I'm just going to add a bit more variety to the sky area, because it's just not quite right. But the thing is, you can wet the sky a few times and then add subtle variations to it, and it's a lot of fun to do, and it can end up looking really good. Okay, let's leave that to dry. Okay, now I'm going to do the grass. So first I'm going to wet it all. So you don't want to go over the same area too many times, because you'll start to shift pigment. The reason I'm wetting it is because I don't want the shadow areas of the grass to be like hard edges. And I think I'll use bamboo brush and maybe also use my palette knife. That will be fun. So it might be too wet at the moment, so timing is very important. And I might also have to wet it again, because if I take a long time doing this, then, well, my voice is really dry, right? But there we go. If I take too long doing this, it will dry out. So I'll have to wet it again. But that's why I should begin maybe here and then move over here. And then when I get here, if it's dry, I can just wet this area again and not interfere with what I've done here. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so yellow ochre, cerulean blue. My palette is moving. I don't want a portable palette. Okay, that might be good. Make it a bit thicker, because my paper's very wet, so if my mix is also wet, this will just explode. So to begin with, I'm just doing subtle shadows, hopefully. That one's exploding a bit. So these are just lines. There, it's dry. And you really have to be minimalist. And I know it's tricky, but you have to be careful that these shadow areas don't look too similar. So some will be longer and some will be shorter. And it's dried here. But we can do a little bit of dry brush as well. Variation of edges. So some hard edges and some soft edges. And I might just go into that with some darker paint. So phthalo blue, and my phthalo blue is solid. It's just solid. And burnt sienna, wow, that really is hard. And I should spray. Dab on the rag to get rid of excess water. Maybe I didn't need to. These are almost like little connecting bits. Hopefully it worked. I think that looks okay. Maybe I overdid it a little bit, yeah. And then with my palette knife, so if it has dried, there'll be no mark. And I have to be careful. I normally overdo this. So if it's dry, there'll be no mark. If it's too wet, the mark will just disappear. And I'm only doing in the foreground because in the background you're not going to get long lines of grass visible, just in the foreground. I think that's not too bad. I overdid it a little bit. There you go. Live and learn. But I'm having fun. Okay, so cerulean blue, touch of yellow ochre. So this is very wet at the moment. But my mix is quite thick, so it's not exploding too much. And then dark mix. Phthalo blue, so hard. And burnt sienna, a bit more. And then get my palette knife. I think that looks quite nice, that bit there. That's not too bad. Let's do, what do I do with my palette knife? Okay, let's do this distant stuff. So because it's distant, it's mostly blue. So cerulean blue, then a bit of this green, and that is good. Maybe a tiny bit of burnt sienna. Okay, dab on the rag. And then also here. and then get some dark paint. Phthalo blue, burnt sienna, more burnt sienna. Okay, here we go. And here too. That's quite nice. And then use this again here. Bit more blue. So maybe cerulean blue, bit of alizarin crimson. It's hard too. Oh, it's working now. So this looks a bit grey. Then here we go. Like that. Okay, so I'm just going to work on the sky again. And the mistake I made, real simple mistake. This bit at the top should be light and down here it should be dark. But I've kind of done it the opposite way. So I don't know why. So just wet this. And then I'll get like a flat, small, flat, bristly brush. Hopefully it's clean. And I'm going to try and soften this. I'm like using the heel of the brush head. I don't know if it's going to work or not. And then some tissue. So I'm really going ham on this. And I need to remember the sun is coming from over here. So left hand side, I think. Already I think that looks better, but could be biased. Okay, now I'm going to wet the lower area. Use my big brush. use my pointed oval and then some cobalt blue. Wow, that's way too much. A touch of alizarin crimson. And tiny bit of yellow ochre. Too much yellow ochre and it goes brown. So let's see what this looks like. I'm a bit apprehensive. Oh, could be good. Because it's quite strong, I'm just putting it on in different areas. Because as I begin to blend it in, it's going to become weaker, yeah? And so it will blend better. Well, that, you see that? You get some lovely subtleties doing this, re-wetting the sky. Look at that, that's quite beautiful. Then wet, wipe on the rag and soften this. And I think an important point here is you might mess this up, yeah, but the important thing to remember is you are getting better though, and over time it will show. But yeah, it might take time, yeah. It always takes time, right? Okay. And then dab on the rag to remove some of the paint, and then I can soften it a bit. There we go. To be honest, I'm not super happy with it, but I think it's better than before. And it was a lot of good practice. Okay, now I'm going to do shadow on here. So I use bamboo to begin with, burnt sienna, start at the top here. And then I'll get some phthalo blue, touch of alizarin crimson, and blend that in. So we've got a little bit of variation there. The nice thing about this building is it's all irregular. Well, some of it is. Okay, I watered this down a bit. And burnt sienna. Put that in there. And then I'm going to get pure cerulean blue. Hopefully it's like concrete. Alizarin crimson. Burnt sienna. It's drying out, so I've got to hurry up. Nice granulation there. I'd love to say I planned it, but it's accidental. But I guess mixing my colours has helped that to happen. And let's do some cerulean blue on this bottom corner. Spray. Okay. Burnt sienna. Bit more watery here. Could be a bad idea. Then phthalo blue, it's concrete. Alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, so very dark. A kind of purple brown. What beautiful colour. But it just looks like black, right? Blend in. Very nice. And then over here, black, burnt sienna, and I forgot to do this bit. There we go. And I'll have to do that wall after this has dried. Although, maybe it's not that important, but I'll wait anyway. Okay, let's do shadows for these rocks. So I'm going to use cerulean blue and alizarin crimson. And there's a bit of dirt in there as well. And that's okay. I've got a spider on the desk. Bit distracting. Don't know if that works. I'll come back to that. So sunlight's coming this way, so this has got a bit of a shadow. And this has a very big shadow. And maybe that shadow is a little bit too strong. If in doubt, dab it. The spider's come back again. And it's on my arm. Now it's on my leg. Give me a break. Could be worse, could be a cockroach, I suppose. It's not too bad. Maybe a few lines. I really am just guessing. Okay, and do this. Okay, start with burnt sienna at the top. Oh, I've got a nice gradation there, right? And then go darker. Phthalo blue, Alizarin crimson. Here we go. Should make that a bit uneven there too. Okay, that came together a bit better. Wow. Oh, and a window. Wow, I might be near to finishing. Feels a bit strange. Hopefully this is dry. Ooh, but some of my rocks aren't. Okay. So, yeah, I'll get liner brush and just use this weakish mix. Add some yellow ochre, brown it off a bit, and let's do just a few lines. So you don't want to do lines all the way across. In fact, maybe the shorter they are, the better. And in the corners, just little things like that. Make it look more natural. I can't believe it, that spider's on the back of my neck now. Hopefully it's not poisonous or anything. Probably not. Oh, I think that's not too bad. That was a bit too much there. Okay, just let that dry. Okay, so we've almost finished. Just a few final touches. Maybe a little bit of detail here, I think, even though it's in the distance. I'll use this brownish mix here and just do a few lines. Like that. And then here, I think darken it here. So, phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, a bit more. And then this corner area here. Just going to darken it. And then water, and just careful around that window. I don't want to move pigment there. And just do that. Blend it in. And I removed too much of the dark pigment, sadly. So I'm just reinforcing that. So this is a bit messy. Okay, I think that's better. Ah, it had to do that. It's one of those days. Okay. But it all makes you better. That's the important point. And with this dark paint, a few even darker marks. Good, bad, I don't know. At this point, I'm not really painting, I'm fighting. I'm fighting here. But hopefully it's the good fight. The good fight. Okay, I think that looks okay. Maybe a bit of a crack there. Spider on the back of my neck. Now it's on my arm. Okay, and then I'm going to do some birds. I think the rocks are not too bad actually. Use my liner brush and Phthalo blue, Alizarin crimson, burnt sienna. That gives me a dark mix very quickly, like a black or a dark brown or a dark purple. Touch of water, a bit more burnt sienna. Okay, here we go. I think that's dry. And then one, two, and the final one, three. And I think that's it. So overall, I'm quite happy with it. I think I did mess around a lot, but sometimes it's like that. Hopefully you can learn a lot from my struggles. Okay, finished. So I don't need my list anymore. So this is one of the sketches. Maybe I did two, but I could only find one. So this is my very first sketch. And to be honest, is this better? So, yeah. So, okay, the brain is not working today. So I'll struggle through. So the idea is that you get better with practice, right? And in the short term, maybe not, okay? Because I think this is better than this. And this was also painted on cheap paper. Is that, it's kind of good in a way, but it's kind of annoying in another way, right? But I think this one is definitely better. Let me know what you think in the comments and help me out with the algorithm, yeah? Because I'm not doing very well at YouTube, am I? Let's be honest, but I'm going to persevere. So I think that's just got mood It's got drama. It's powerful. It's just fantastic. And I do think this is a nice painting, but it's a lot more calmer, sedate. What do you think? And the clouds are nice, but this is better, right? And I'm going to stop touching it because I'm getting grease all over it, and I can sell this one because it's fantastic. You know, put that in an A4 frame, sell it for a very reasonable price. You should buy. It's a bargain. It's a bargain. It's a work of art, and it's a fantastic piece of craftsmanship. Okay, now these are the other ones I did. So there's this one. So this looks really good as well. Maybe even better than this one. This was painted on good quality paper, and I think it looks really beautiful. And I'm selling this too. And when you put it in a cheap A4 frame, look how fantastic it looks. Very, very roughly, but there we go. Beautiful, right? Beautiful. And this is my evening one. Just a min, guys. So, and I think this is very beautiful. I like to experiment, yeah? Isn't that beautiful? And when I put the frame on, ta-da! Fantastic, right? I think that's got a wonderful mood, absolutely wonderful mood to it. But you tell me in the comments, yeah? I think it's beautiful. So you can buy these A4 frames on Amazon. They're really cheap, and they come with like a stand and some strings, so you can also hang them. Put in one of Gareth's paintings. I'm Gareth, by the way. And look at that. You've got a fantastic piece of art, and for a very good price. Do I sound desperate? Maybe I'm desperate. Anyway, that's all for this week's lesson. I'll be back hopefully next week with another lesson that you're going to enjoy. So bye for now. Oh, also there'll be a link in the description box to my shop where you can buy not just originals like these, so these are originals, but also prints. So that's all. Bye for now.